Good morning to you, my friends, wherever you may be in the world today. Alan Clements here from the island of Maui in Hawaii, middle of the Pacific. Today is June 27, 2021, something like that. Somewhere spinning through eternity. Here we are, we're sitting, standing, walking, talking. Thank you for tuning in wherever you may be in the world. A spontaneous talk today on something moving me over the last several months, several years, especially the last couple of days, and even yesterday, even right now, to you. The word Sangha, the Pali Buddhist word, the universal word for my best interpretation, is liberating relationships. Non-collusive relationships, ones that courageously challenge complicity and collusion rather than the either or. And so if I may spontaneously serendipity along this landscape of heart and body with you, this place of touch, this place of physical and emotional and pre-existential sensation that we share, this one breath, this colossal home that we're in called samsara. The Buddhist Pali word, Sangha. Allow me to say a few words about it, but before I dive in with you and with your support, I am honored to say that here on this upcoming weekend, July 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, there is a global virtual gathering, an invitation to you to invite as many people in your life that you wish to tune in. There are no obligations virtually. There's a group in the morning from 10 until 12 and in the afternoon from 1 until 3. They'll be broadcast, God willing, here on live stream, put up on my SoundCloud and also on my YouTube channel, as well as on the other podcast channels that I distribute through, but primarily live here on the digital medium of live stream on Facebook. If you're interested to tell your friends, invite your friends, just simply like the page and you will be informed of when that gathering begins on July 2nd, Friday at 10 a.m. here Hawaii time, if there is such a thing. I'm really looking forward to it, and equally, it's the first outing for nearly 2 years for me of being in human company. The gathering will be an invitation to those people on island or any of the other islands, either long-term residents, short-term residents, those flying in, who wish to communicate and commune with me and the people that are coming. At the moment, I have not been informed or have I asked about who's coming. It doesn't matter to me. It's those people who want to come, who want to talk, who want to share, that most important to me. So if you are interested, the elegant gathering organizer, Karen Jeffries, her email is to be found on any number of my previous broadcasts here on my Facebook page. And perhaps she's listening. She may even post her email on this particular live stream. Just simply contact her and she is uber efficient with details and how to go about being here on July 2nd, or if you wish to commit to the 3rd, if there's space, or the 4th. Priority is being given based upon my own personal desire to those who wish to come all 3 days. There's something in the development of that space that touches me, and I wish to support that. Sangha. Sangha. I was thinking, just walking this morning here in this nature reserve, of where the word Sangha, community, intimacy, liberating intimacy, trust, beauty, freedom, struggle, complexity, forgiveness, hope, love, lust, desire, fear, eroticism, celibacy, tenderness, convulsive fear, separation, divorce, all the various definitions and meanings that we as humans interrelate with one another. And there comes the word Sangha. To me, it's a very special word. And the Buddha, as I understand it in the traditional texts, refers to it in a very beautiful way. Those individuals dedicated to Dhamma. I use the word Dhamma here because it speaks to me. You can use the word whatever it means to you. Dharma, the Sanskrit version of Dhamma, or simply the lawfulness of consciousness as it intersects with body and mind and in context with other, world, environment, and multidimensionality. So human consciousness in context to self and in context to other than self. Earth, water, air, dimensionality. And what we do there, the Dhamma, is the lawfulness of the engagement of inner beingness, interiority, physicality, consciousness, emotions, and thoughts, interiority with context at the confluence of the senses. That process I refer to as Dhamma. And Sangha, the meaning of Sangha as I employ it in my own life, are those individuals dedicated, it's a very tricky word, dedicated to a degree of dedication that you honor, respect, to therefore use the word Sangha. Individuals dedicated to the transformation of interiority. What do I mean by the word transformation? For me, I use the word transformation in alignment with Dhamma. The transformation of fear, greed, ignorance, and all the thousands of nuances of those words into their opposites. Greed, generosity, anger, loving kindness, delusion, wisdom. All the nuances of those dualities, the transformation of interiority, the Dhamma of transformation, mindfully intelligent engagement of the phenomenology of interiority, states of mind, physicality, sensations, thoughts, at the confluence of consciousness and physicality at the senses, in context to what seems to be an exterior. That employment of mindful, patient, determined, courageous presence at the confluence is what I call Dhamma, and those individuals who I anoint and those who include me in their understanding of Sangha are individuals, boys and girls, men and women, dedicated to the evolution, transformation of consciousness at the context of the senses with self and other than self. That's a very heightened degree of definition for me of what constitutes intimacy, non-collusion, deep engagement with the transformation of self with other. Pause. There's so many forms of relationship. We can never talk enough about how many forms, how many different styles. But the word Sangha here, let me just sidetrack. And when I was a monk, and also in the monastery in Burma, and also in other countries, as a layman and also as a bhikkhu or a Buddhist monk, there are a number of things that I felt very privileged to learn. Number one was meditation. Two was how to, in my own humble way, I don't like using the word teach. Those of you who know me know that I don't like being labeled a teacher. I'm not a teacher. I don't have students. I don't like even the word of teachings. It's too stealth. There's not enough humility in it. But for me, meditation and in the relative employment of how to consciously and mindfully support others in their own process of learning and acquiring some skill in meditation, which, as we know, it's a lifelong journey. But appropriate to this particular sharing is the word Sangha. It's loosely used as monks and nuns in Burma who don the mahogany robe and the pink robe, shave their head, renounce financial engagement, renounce sexual intimacy through physical touch and through words, and employ deep, deep nekkhamma, the renunciation of the need to engage in social, cultural behaviors without judgment, but to stay in elegant seclusion, to heighten Dhamma transformation and the radiance of those boys and girls, men and women in the robes, called Sangha. And in a monastery or a sacred temple, a sacred grounds, a meditation temple, men and women that I am associated with were nuns and monks primarily, but a lot of lay people, and they had this elegant way of interrelating that was just so beautiful for me as this rebel, young, maverick, American, music, sexually addicted, driven, hope addict, and I decathexed from society and culture and the various things that I left behind, carried with them to some extent, but I really gave over to the word and the employment of Sangha as a non-collusion based dedication to liberating intimacy, both with self and inevitably in the context of nuns and monks in a sacred monastery. And yes, you don't leave your sexuality, you don't leave finances, you don't leave history and memory and conditionings behind, but you reinvent, you reinvigorate the meaning, the texture, the cognitive characteristics, especially rooted in the values of honor and dignity and in conscience. And rare did I ever hear those words, dignity, conscience, moral integrity, all wrapped up in the words hiri and ottappa, or sila, moral etiquette, moral intelligence. And without moralizing about that, it's something so beautiful to be in a community, whether it be in your home or whether it be in a monastery or in a short gathering or digitally, where you can play in the trustful commitment to a participation in the rapport where there's an agreed upon transparency and honesty, and that you commit to other and to self in transparency, in honesty, in conscience. I want to know meditatively the texture, the feeling, the taste, the nutritional beauty of the state of mind known as dignity. I want to communicate transparency and honesty and skillfulness, timing and tone, meaning and definition, generosity, love, patience, determination, beauty, tenderness, forgiveness, hope, healings, and transformational cures through silence and engagement, appropriateness and skillfulness. Look at all the nuances of the cognitive mapping, the networks of intimacy called Sangha. Heightened Dhamma rapport. It's so cool. I'm just so down with that. And I just love those individuals who want to play in that kind of Rumi-esque, trans-Rumi-esque, trans-Buddha field of beautiful cognitive, emotional, psychological, emotional, tonal rapport. Because who can I be without you, right? Ubuntu. This is the erotification model of Ubuntification that I keep using, that I cannot be without the creative aesthetics of the erotification, of the Ubuntification, of shared space, that dynamic of I and other as self and separate together. Words defy the intimacy of being in this world, but we obviously can't feed ourselves. We can't breathe only on our own. Everything is deeply interconnected, to state the obvious. Sangha. Deep liberating intimacy. And the other things in the monastery weren't just Sangha. Yes, you had struggles. Yes, you had moments of relapse. Yes, those of you who've been nuns and monks or lay people temporarily in a monastery, you know that you don't leave complexity behind because of the label. Human consciousness is inherently flawed. To state something so overly looked, inherently flawed with deception and negation and doubt and restlessness and worry and fear. And I'm not saying celebrate those shadows or those differences. I'm saying something even more Dhammically beautiful than that is learn from them. Sangha. I learned in the monasteries in Burma that we are there as men and women in the robes. The women as tilashins, bhikkhunis in the pink robes, and the monks, bhikkhus, in the mahogany robes. We are there to transform complexity, known as the kilesas. That means to learn from our mistakes. And so every 2 weeks in the monastery, you have a thing called patimokkha. And the boys and the girls and the nuns and the monks, all in their own respective ways that are lawful to the systems in Burma and in Thailand and Vietnam and Lanka and India and Nepal and Bhutan and Tibet and Nepal, everywhere, where there are monks and nuns in these traditions, you come forth. And it's a very beautiful, I call it a hymn to the divinity of existence, that there are those people dedicated to the beautification of relationship. And because you're consciously celibate and you refrain from self-pleasures and you do all that you can to challenge habits, therein lies a radicalization of shared space. To be up close to men and women in these proximities of cognitive transparency, a lot comes up. And so every 2 weeks we get together in patimokkha and we confess our shortcomings. And if there's something that's gross or something that's been specific, you go to that nun or you go to that monk, you go to that person, and you reveal without the need to seek forgiveness the mistake, the shortcoming, the flaw. And it was a very beautiful way to begin to integrate into my own personal life what it meant to be a more honorable being, more righteous, more open, more dignified, more accepting, more engaging, more risk-taking. Because you're in a very intimate proximity with thousands of other boys and girls and men and women in these surroundings, in these monasteries. I mean, the monastery where I lived in Burma, sometimes we had 500 men and women. Sometimes we had 1,000, sometimes we had 3,000. There were weeks in the year that we had 5,000 and 10,000 people living in 10, 15-acre monastery. It was very close in, very beautiful. But more appropriate to the sharing was what I would call the Super Sangha. I don't know why I say that. Maybe it was because I'm on Maui, where Oprah lives just up the hill here in Super Sundays. Super Sangha. And Super Sangha to me is, I would call it a super subtle Sangha. And it was a rare privilege to be invited in to what became my, I would call it my Dhamma nest. I wanted to use the word tribe. It's a little bit too tribal, a little bit too raw. That's a kind of a more naked Western trans-monastic model for me, but it was held as a mother would in her womb, the Super Sangha. This has been around a Kalyanamitta. Kalyanamitta is a very specialized form of intimacy. And those of you who've been privileged to be near a Kalyanamitta, just let me backtrack here. And I've said this story a million times, but it can't be said enough. When Ananda, the Buddha's attendant and dear friend, were walking together through the forest, it was said that Ananda told the Buddha, "It seems to me, my friend, the Buddha, that the Dhamma life," the beautiful word, the Dhamma life, what does the Dhamma life mean to you? To me, the Dhamma life. And Ananda said, "Buddha, it seems that half the Dhamma life is about noble friendship." And the Buddha was said to have said, he turned around and said to his dear friend Ananda, he said, "No. And no, it's not true, Ananda. The whole of the Dhamma life, the entirety." is Kalyanamitta. Noble, noble friendship. I cannot, at this stage of life, I could not emphasize enough that every form of lover, every form of relationship is so rooted in how well you feel the friendship basis of it. There's a caring. It doesn't necessarily have to be like, I'm just lustfully driven for your being, goddess. There is a place for everything. But the elevating non-drama, the support system in the beauty of noble friendship. Being around Seda U Pandita and the late Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw, my preceptor and teacher, but more specifically around Seda U Janaka, Seda U Pandita, Seda U Sujata, Seda U Zawana, special men to me in my life. They had an inner nest, a Super Sangha. These were like, some of them were misfits, some of them were former generals in the army, some were former terrorists, some were sex workers, teachers, professors, zoology, physics, nuns, monks, priests. It's a consortium of the radicalization of closeness. And I know you know what I mean. Like, I could not be where I am today without my Super Sangha, my own intimacies of this consortium of mavericks and misfits and clinical this and psychologists that and meditators here and teachers there. And I have my wild tribe of people that I've known and know. And I don't care what they've done, whether they've been, whatever they've done, whatever they do. It's the heartfulness of their ability and my ability to commune in that special field of cognitive, emotional, mental, psychological, intimate, erotified, transformational awakening of interiority at the confluence of the senses in context called Dhamma, Sangha, Super Sangha. And watching the men and women over the years interrelate with my Kalyanamitta, Seda U Pandita at the time, it was a beautiful experience to see, and there were flaws, but to see and to feel and witness high fidelity, respect, and communication for truthfulness. It was just in playfulness and unthinkably nuanced humor, where you could almost just hear consciousness forming and sculpting the characterization through their thought process. You know, in Super Sangha settings, especially if you employ sustained evolutional meditation spaces and high fidelity consciousness exchanges, it becomes, I would call it, luminous and radicalized with thought processes that you could only describe in the dimension of the psychic intuitive playfulness in the field. And when and those of you who know, you know that those dimensions are super uber accessible, whether it be through sustained meditative development, you have a high degree of concentration, or whether you play in the field of the psychedelic metaphors and the psychedelic molecules, or whether you just simply anoint yourself with the subtleties of fasting and diet, nutrition and hymn and poem and sonic vibration and subtlety and nuance, or you've been diagnosed, or that you fear or you feel your own mortality, and there's something that shifts and it takes the future and the time and the pretense out of space, even for a few days or an hour or two, and you go, ah. I came to this island of Maui by choice. I came to see, and I say this with tremendous respect, I know many, many people on this island and on these islands. I would say that they're family. They're part of my Sangha, and they have been for many decades. But at this point in my life, where mortality is ever present for all of us, and I know some of you well enough to know that you and I sit in the same understanding. But personally, in my own experience, in the recognition of mortality, there's a heightened sense of choice-making immediacy. And it comes right back to those special people whom you want to dance, to listen, to talk, to commune, to liberate with and through. I'm refraining from using the word heal. I believe that I'm more of a cognitive blossom than a wound that finds some form of healing. I don't subscribe to that type of deficit model, regardless. And so my point here is that I came here specifically to see three people, each for a specific purpose. And I saw them all yesterday on day one. In a serendipity, a cognitive, existential, semi-unplanned constellation that one could only honor. And I say this with a high degree of confidence that Sangha and Super Sangha are not just beings in form here, but in the simultaneity of the transparency, unless we're subtle enough to see, feel, and intuit the dimensionality where devas and deities coexist with us as humans, just in the same way that nature and non-humans coexist with us and we coexist with them. I learned in the monasteries to live your life, Agathara, which was my name as a bhikkhu. Live your life in this sacred environment in honor of the non-human lives that are simultaneously in coexistence with you and us in the physical plane, whether the animal dimensions, the ghost deity, Peta dimensions, but more specifically, the dimensionality of the radiance of ephemeral bodies known as devas, cognitively illuminated creatures based upon the refinement of consciousness. Again, I'm stating the obvious to those of you who've meditated. You know the word deva dhammas, dhammas or characteristics of consciousness that are luminous with deva-like qualities. You can talk about love, compassion, and patience, determinations, and courage, and wisdom on the human plane. And there are those boys and girls who are refined yogis who live in those dimensions, although we look physically somewhat the same. They're cognitively very refined. And that dimensionality extends beyond the physical plane. And so I learned in the monastery to coexist with devas as if they were human. And the same thing I feel ever more present in my life in the last 3 years, the last 6 months in Burma, the year before, and the year after in Bali, a highly sacred environment for me at least. And in Los Angeles, a sacred temple, but more specifically here on the island of Maui, a sacred, I use the word sparingly, a sacred vortex that I feel that I am crafting and co-creating to the best of my ability with a few people. But yesterday was a manifestation of how deities and devas and good human rapport, I feel like I'm being led, supported. And it was a beautiful occasion to meet with my beloved long-term ally, soul sister, Summer Richardson, who is going through her own ongoing multiple-decade medical, physical, psychological, existential, radical challenge. I have no symptoms. All I've got is this surreal diagnosis of a fatal death with a ticking bomb image all over the heart. She's got a terribly wicked, painful, muscular, sonic, anatomical, nervous system, head, neck, mouth, brain, convulsion that requires unthinkable degrees of mindful, courageous, present time engagement with the tension of this level of unremitting pain. It is a remarkable expression of what Daw Aung San Suu Kyi in Burma calls grace under pressure. You could call it courage. Courage renewed repeatedly under harsh, unremitting pressure. That's my beloved soul sister, Summer Richardson. We went to see the beloved Bodhi B, the death doula of the globe, the preeminent cognitive theologian with a heart wider than the oceans, higher than the skies. A communion of 3 hours with this gentleman. To you, Reverend Sir, my heart, my deep bow of gratitude for your years of wisdom and your vision and your gift of compassion and caringness to do what you do and what you have done. A man dedicated to the transformation of life by looking squarely into the heart of the goddess of death and saying, I love you. I refuse to fear your presence. We are all dancing with the god and the goddesses of mortality every nanosecond of existence. This gentleman reminded me in our conversation, in the immediacy of that phenomena of death as illusion. Temporary, yes. Birth, death, birth, death, birth, death, birth, rebirth, redeath, rebirth, redeath. Every nanosecond, the biological causality of mind and body in a formation and disillusioning process of earth, cosmos, dimensionality. Astrophysics tell us of eons of time, black holes, nuclear holocaust the size of multitudes, anthropocentric extinctions. We're in the 6th. Think of the simultaneity of arisal and passing in a nanosecond called 10 million light years long. The wave builds of time, civilizations come and decline. A human body is born through the beloved womb of divinity And he and she grows older, and some die in womb, some have operations immediately upon their birth in this plane. And others live to 80, 90. Some live in torturous conditions. Some have to immolate themselves, like the Tibetan nuns and monks in Tibet, in the Middle East, in China, in Hong Kong, in Tibet, in Burma, to light the sky of conscience, to let us other humanoids out here to awaken to the suffering that they're encountering. And please do not turn away from the light of your own conscience and let it manifest into compassion. President Biden, intervene in Burma. United Nations, intervene in Burma. My point here is that mortality is inbuilt to the system of eternity. You know it, I know it. Bodhi B reminds us of it by the gentleman's way of living. He's taking the fear out of death. For 3 hours we talked. I came here to see him. The details are radically private. They're timeless. They're beautiful. The gentleman gifted them to me from my heart. We're about to leave. The third person I came to this island to see, Malik Cotter, a brother. We met nearly 50 years ago, a mile from where we met yesterday. A young radical with my partner at the time coming here, camping at Baldwin Beach, which I walked to yesterday with Summer. Malik, the savant of the body, of the mind, the interaction, the naturalness of healer, the being who understands tinctures and aromas and acupuncture and massage and medicines from dimensions upon dimensions of historical civilizations and continents, the Middle East, America, the native indigenous, the Chinese, the Persians, the Mongolians, the Tibetans, the deep, deep, deep humans here in the Hawaiian chain, the beloved indigenous people who are the original inhabitants of these sacred islands, the integration of all these methods and techniques in what's known as his beloved temple of healing and honesty with trans-medical terror, and I've had my own in the last 3 months, trans-medical terror. He offers a sacred engagement to ailment, disease, both physical, metaphorical, and cognitive. And I came to see this gentleman, and we talked, we communed. Brother, rare do I have any more brother. They all died in the last 4 years primarily, except my beloved dear friend Mitch. And there's 2 or 3 others out there that I just love. These are long-term brothers, Bodhi B, Malik Cotter. Now we're planning to go. He lives just up the street here. I'm going to meet with him, beloved through his generosity. And we're going to walk in the forest, and we're going to talk and commune. And he's going to look very, very carefully at my months of UCLA medical charts and summaries by these incredibly talented surgeons and offer me a sustained, deep analysis and support through inhalation, exhalation of deep indigenous transformational medicinal wisdom to my dedication, not to healing. Bodhi B pointed out to me yesterday, to a cure. They say it's magical thinking. They use the word, it says magical thinking, that I will live if I don't do surgery. They say it's magical thinking. That the aorta will reduce in size. They said it with incredible fidelity to their integrity. They said it with the utmost compassion. It is so contrary to my identity of what I call the Dhamma medicine, the Dhamma cure. And the real vocation for me within Sangha and liberating intimacy is the overcoming of fear, the overcoming of shame, the overcoming of self-doubt. As I close, it takes, I say this with a choke, it takes a lot of courage now to face the day. I was asked, am I grateful to be awake in the morning? I was hard-pressed to say yes. I was asked if I'm depressed. I was hard-pressed to say no. What gives me hope right now, I didn't anticipate this, but such is life, is you. That's right, you. Us. Those special men and women that embody the gorgeous attributes of liberating intimacy. My own Sangha, my unique family, my tribe, this network of recognized mutuality, my Super Sangha. And the incredible love I feel for the people in and through that field of specialness. And you know who you are. You've been tuning into my life, my work, my journey for weeks and months now, some of you for years, others for decades. I love you. I am with you, and I'm inviting you for this weekend to commune with me, both in person and digitally around the world. This is the time, this is the moment, this is the best that I'll ever be, and I wish to share that communion, to keep alive the most precious gift I've ever received in this world, which is the meaning and the opportunity to embody the higher values of Sangha, of deep, deep regard for the intimacies of this limitless, transformational transparency of shared space, doing special things together to elevate the most precious thing I know, Dhamma. The radiance of freedom in this world, the freedom to cry, to give birth, to dance, to love, to separate, to come together, to give, to receive, to listen, to learn. The high art of the artistry, I would call it, the artistry of Sangha. And so from my heart to yours, I wish to thank you for today, the opportunity to commune with you from my heart to yours. I hope to see you tomorrow here at 9:30 for this special opportunity. And I do close with the final invitation. I don't know how many spaces are available that remain for those who are on island and wish to come out for the day. Bring your meal, bring your lunch, whatever it is that's important to you. Just reach out to Karen Jeffries, email her. She's profoundly compassionate, caring, efficient, and empathetic, and she will give you everything you need to be in this room with others and myself. Friday, July 2nd, Saturday, July 3rd, Sunday, July 4th, and I'm saying, if you have it in you and you want to do it, commit to the 3 days, you get priority over someone who's coming for the day. And so from my heart to yours, I hope to see you, and if not, you always have the live stream to connect. And if you're brand new to me in my life and you're on this island and you want to say hello or meet or connect, I don't know how long I'll be here. I am taking it by the day. I truly am taking my life by the hour right now, but really by the day in terms of navigating the next steps of where to be, with whom to be with. Reach out. And all I ask of you is high order communication, deep regard for poise, for silence, for non-conditioned narratives, and commune, as I did yesterday with Summer and Bodhi B and Malik, as a rare event. I'm looking for those rare moments. It doesn't have to be heavy. I don't need to be asked, how are you doing? You don't need to be asked how you're doing. Commune. Let's just hang, talk, relate, and feel, and take it higher. So the whole weekend retreat is about taking it higher. And I want to thank Mr. Nick Cave for my most recent anthem sent to me, my beloved friend and ally and unthinkable savant, sister, goddess, lover, Ja Pace. And I've been listening to Mr. Cave actively for the last couple of weeks. And if you want to tune in to Pushing the Sky Away, it's given me a lot of hope and a lot of consistent courage to do the impossible. So, have a great day. Hope to see you tomorrow. Thank you.